Well, here's a good comment on quality. The fittings from turn of the century, probably earlier. One I did have to remove. I discovered that it's 3/16 by 40 thread, so it was probably built in Britain. And the threading on the upper and lower retaining ring was okay, but a little bit weak on the top, so I did add some silicone, some high heat super copper gasket silicone. We're looking now to see how the fire is affecting the boiler right now. We've got steam, so we can start this little engine here and start running this to bleed off some of the pressure. Looks like that we have a small leak on the front here, right at the apex of the top there. Doesn't seem to be, it's starting to blow I think now, but that shouldn't be too hard of a fix. We'll certainly find out what the material is that is used for soldering at that point. But inside we're not getting any problem with the heat, and butane is quite hot, so that's a good indication that it is pretty hard solder. But there we have a little leak that we will have to remedy. We might try to remedy it with a little JB putty, and then JB weld over top of it first as a non-destructive fix, as I'm really not interested in putting a torch to it if I don't have to. Here we have a leak at the top of the sight glass tube entrance. Basically that's where we can drop the sight glass into the column there, and that's leaking, so that needs a washer, a new washer. But everything else, considering the age of this, it's quite amazing. I pressure tested it with water hydrostatically up to 80 psi, which blew me away. And I did have a little water on it, so I didn't see this leak here at that point. But that's not going to be catastrophic, so it will leak a little bit there, and that'll be a bleed if it have to have a bleed on it. So let's see if the steam engine will go now. Try to get it warmed up. It's a little Marklin engine. Need a little bit more time to boil, but it is going, so we have steam coming now. A very, very classic boiler. Very happy with this, and we'll work on this little leak here. We're not leaking out of the sight glass at all now. I put a new drain caulk on it here, as the other one was leaking and needs some service. So I'm soaking it now in some penetrating oil, and I'll go to work on that, get it apart. It has a screw on the end of it. It's not a rivet fit, so I can actually service it hopefully, and maybe seal it up. If not, it's not a great big loss. I took this one off of a boiler that I grabbed as a parts machine. So there we go, the engine is going. I think this boiler works. This engine should get out of control, I think, quite quickly, which would indicate that it will run a larger steam engine like the Cirrus, or perhaps the Stewart number 8 or number 9, or the Bischoff. I'll be fixing the Bischoff crank. I noticed that it's a little bit tweaked. That's why the flywheel was wobbling a slight bit. So I'll have to be remachining the crank on the Bischoff or making a new crank. I'm not sure. I'll have to decide this week. But I think I have a live center, so I can probably make a crank for that and duplicate the identical look to it, rather than try to grind down or lathe off part of the shaft to make it true and then sleeve it. I think making a whole new crank might be a lot easier, so that will be an interesting project. I have also to tap these two holes here on this large Falk engine, and I have to fix this sight glass here, which is quite loose. So I'll be examining this in the next video as a way of remedying this problem, and whether or not we're going to have to solder these onto the casing, or we're going to find out that there's threads there and we're able to pack the threads or fix the threads, one or the other. So there you go. The Marklin engine is happy with its new little boiler running. I have that leak at the front to mark, so I'll get on my duties here. And everything else on this engine or boiler is working quite well. Here's the safety valve. It's quite interesting. It's a plug. And it really, really works well. Seals wonderfully. Whoever made this was definitely a skilled fabricator, because short of this small leak here, it's a very, very sturdy copper boiler. And if you look here, you can't even see the seam where he joined it. And this isn't paint. This is copper. So he made almost a seamless join between this dome, which is hand fabricated, and is a true steam dome, because it has a perforated bottom plate on it for steam to come through and water to stay below. Could put a superheat tube down here and in and around and back out, which I might think of doing this week. Would probably benefit a lot. We'll have to find out how many leaks and what the integrity of it is like with the butane burner. I also have a separate burner that I'm going to cut the hose off of, and I'll feed propane into it via silicone tube that is zip tied up together just for testing purposes. There you go. Little Marklin is from probably a kit or a power plant platform. It's not on its right base there, but very smooth running engine though. We're getting quite a bit of spitting out of the top of the solder heap up there. The sight glass is working very well. Can use the bleed down. Well, bleed up maybe. And there we go. We have a proper level again. Holds a lot of water. I was quite surprised. Kept filling it and filling it and filling it. So 6.5 or so inches in diameter by a good 7 or 8 inches of water capacity equals quite a bit of water, I guess. And there we go. We have a little bit of a water leak at the top of the sight glass now. We'll have to address that. Don't want to tighten it too much. But we're producing steam. Might add a manometer to this, a German vintage pressure gauge. Would probably do well to have one. And there you go. Very early Victorian brass and copper riveted boiler.